Hey guys, welcome back to Frances Quilts. My name is Frances Arnold and I have been a quilter for almost 40 years. Today we're finishing up this little quilt that we've been working on for the last few months. In doing this quilt, we have learned how to do a square spiral. We have learned how to do a very intricate design just using 21 dots as marking. We've done this design with 5 dots of marking. We've done some dot-to-dot designs in through here. We've added some ribbon candy in through here. We've just had a lot of fun trying a lot of different things. First thing that I did to get this quilt ready was to trim off all of the excess fabric on the edges and get it down to just the proper size. I used a 3-inch mark on my ruler, matched that up with the last border seam and used that to trim the quilt down. Trying to be careful at the corners to keep them flat and straight. Now fortunately, when I finished the top, I went ahead and made the binding. In my case, I like to use a 2 1/4 inch binding. So I cut strips of my fabric 2 1/4 inches wide. I sewed them together using a 45-degree angle seam, and then I folded them in half and ironed them in place. So now I have my binding ready to go. The quilt's all trimmed up and ready to go. Let's get to the machine and get this binding on. Before we get started, let's talk also about a binding tool that I use. This is something that I learned from Karen Brown of Just Get It Done Quilts. This is just cut out of a hard plastic material here, and it is 2 1/4 inches. So the width of my binding is that strip right there. That entire thing is 2 1/4. And then I have just done a 45-degree angle right here. This is the tool that I'm going to use to do my measurements as I am turning my corners, and I'm going to use it in several things when I'm applying the binding. All right, I'm ready to go here. I prefer to use my walking foot because I feel like it draws the fabric through a little bit smoother. I still have my tape in place here for my exact 1/4 inch, and I'm going to be running the edge of this quilt along the edge of that tape just to make sure that I'm using the right width for my seam. To start with, I'm going to leave myself 10 or 12 inches free up here, and I'm going to just line the edge up with the edge of the quilt. Let's put it under the machine. And we're going to start stitching. Again, I'm lining this edge of my binding up with the edge of my quilt, and I'm lining both of those up with the edge of this piece of tape right here. Same thing, line them up again. Now, as I approach the corner, I'm going to tell you something different from what most people tell you. Most binding makers tell you to stop a 1/4 inch here and then turn. I don't worry about that, and I'll show you how it works. I just come off. Normally I'm fairly close to a 1/4 inch, but I may come a little bit more than a 1/4 inch, and then I'm going to back up just a few stitches and stop. Now this is where my little binding buddy tool comes in. Let me show you how it works. Okay, I can tell that I've sewn it too far. You especially can tell when you start folding it back. But if you just pop out those 1 or 2 stitches, rather than worrying about stitching too far, purposely stitch too far, back stitch on them so that the stitches are locked, and then pop out whatever you need to. Now I'm going to take my binding tool and I'm going to place it at the top of my piece right here, my quilt right here, along that edge. I'm going to have this point right here is going to be right on the tip of the edge of the quilt. So with it in place, I can now come up like this and be sure that I have a perfect 45-degree angle right here. Now, while holding that in place, I'm going to lift this up and I'm going to place it on top. And the same thing, I have it lined up along the top right here, and I have this lined up with this edge that I just put in there. And it gives me a nice edge here that I can bring this down and fold it back down like that. Now, I'm going to pull this out and hold that in place. I'm going to put it under my machine, but I am not going to start at that 1/4 inch mark. Instead, I'm going to start a little ways, pretty much off the quilt. And I may make a couple of stitches here if I need to. You'll see that they really don't matter. But now I have that corner stitched in place. Let's keep going. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to come right past a 1/4 inch. We may not go as far as we did last time, but we will stop when we get somewhere around that 1/4 inch range, but we're not going to worry too much about it. Do 2 more stitches, back up just a little bit, pull it out of the machine. Now I'm ready to go again. I'm going to pull this back like this, and it's not exactly straight. So let's pop out a stitch. Again, it's just going to take one coming out. But again, that's much easier to me than figuring out that I have to be exactly on 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to take my binding tool right here. I'm going to lay it on top here like this. I'm going to lay it in that corner. Make sure that I have it exactly in that corner right there. And I'm going to pull up. That's got my 45-degree angle right there. Hold that in place. Binding tool on top. Get it all even here again. Pull this back down until it's flat. Hold it in place. Put it under the machine and let's go again. All right, I'm now at the point that I'm ready to attach these two pieces together from each end. I've stopped well early before I met the other seam, and I'm going to done just a little back stitch here. Now this has always been one of the hardest parts for me, but doing it using this tool has made a huge difference, and let me see if I can show you how it's done. It might be easier if I took it to my cutting board, but we're just going to go with this for now and see if you can see it. I'm going to lay out one side all the way across like this. I'm going to take the other side and I'm going to lay it on top. All right, I'm going to pick a space somewhere here in the middle, and I am going to cut this bottom piece. Let's just come about halfway in between the two places and let's just cut it. Help if I use the sharp scissors. Now I'm going to take my binding buddy that I had, and I'm going to lay it on top of that piece right there. Can you see that? And I'm going to take this over here from the other side, and I'm going to lay it on top of that. Now look, I know exactly where I need to cut along right where that binding buddy has, where the edge is right there. So I'm going to come in here, just line up here, and cut. So now I have my two pieces ready to butt together. So I have it open now. I'm going to take my binding buddy, and I'm going to lay it here and along the edge here, and I'm going to draw my 45-degree angle in right here. All right, so I know now exactly where I'm going to be stitching. One of the things that often happens when you are doing binding is that you'll get them put together, but then when you look at it, you find out that you've got them twisted. So this is a way to keep that from happening. I'm going to take the side that I have marked right here, and I'm going to fold it like it was cut there. So I've got it folded right there, like that. I'm going to lay this one inside it, and I'm going to fold it up like this. So now that tells me where I need to, which edges I need to put together to make this work. So if I come in here and I pick up one of the top ones and one of the bottom ones, I know that as long as those two corners are together, I'm going to have a nice seam and it's going to work right. So now I'm going to pin those in place, put it under my foot, and just sew along that line right there that I have marked. Now before I cut any of the fabric, I'm going to make sure that it works. So I'm going to lay it out like that. I'm going to see that it's nice and flat along here, and I can see that it's not twisted and it's going to work fine. So then I'm going to come in here and clip off this extra fabric. Now I'll come back up where I started and pick it up again. And finish sewing off the binding. The binding is all the way around. Let's move to the ironing board and look at the next steps. The first thing that we're going to do is have a look at these corners. If you look, they are sewn all the way across. All right, so you could not make those into a mitered corner. But if we come in here and just pick out 1 or 2 stitches right there, we bring it back so that it makes a beautiful mitered corner. I'm pulling this back, and I'm just going to take out 1 or 2 stitches of that line right there. Normally I just take out 1 and the others just pull out. But the point here is that those two are nicely together, and I didn't have to worry about that 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now the next step that I do is I press this out before I do anything else. So I'm just going to take my iron using steam or some mist or something like that, and I'm just going to press all the way along the edge. When I get to that corner, I'm just going to press into that corner a little bit and then keep going around the corner like this. I'm not going to worry about this one too much until I get to the next step. All right, I do one more step before I take this to the machine. I actually fold over this edge and iron it in place all the way around. When I get to the corner here, let me show you what I'm going to do. I've got it ironed in place. I'm going to put my thumb here and my finger back here, and I'm going to pull it. I'm actually tugging it and pull that into place like that so that it has a little bit of a curve there. Now if I come over here and I iron all the way out like that, you see I have a nice 45-degree angle there. And now if I come over here and I fold it back over like this, you can see I have a pretty good mitered corner right there. May have a little dimple in it, but it's good enough for me. I come down here and continue ironing all the way around. All right, now I'm going to switch feet again. You could do this next section with a walking foot, but this is a left compensating foot. And if you look, you see that the left-hand side here is slightly below the other side. And it means that if I butt this edge up to the edge of my binding, it will stitch 1/8 of an inch away. It's a great foot to have. They're called different things by different companies, so if you're interested, check it out. So with my binding ironed over so that I have a good seam there, I know exactly where it needs to fold. I'm going to put the left edge of the compensating foot up against the edge of my binding, and I'm just going to start stitching. Very carefully, I'm going to take my time and continue to move back and forth down here to make sure that that binding is staying in the right place. Let's just start stitching. Again, you can do this with a walking foot or just your regular sewing foot. You just need to make sure that this stitching doesn't fall off of the edge here. We want to keep it right along the edge of that binding. Stop frequently and adjust. As I'm coming down to the corner, I'm just going to fold all of that in the way I want it to be. And you see I still have a nice 45-degree miter there. I'm going to sew up to that point. And I may need to grab a stiletto. Let's find one. I'm going to put my stiletto right there in that point, and I'm going to stitch right up to it. When I hit that point, I'm going to pivot my fabric and stitch out 5 or 6 stitches, and then I'm going to sew back up over those, stopping again when I get to that point where I turned in the first place. I can turn the corner now, again pull everything in place and make sure that I'm all set, and keep stitching. And I'm back where I started. Let's see how it looks on the back. That's not too bad. I really want to learn to keep this line, to get this line straighter on the back. But honestly, if I just used a thread back here that would match, you would not have noticed it anyway. But it's finished. Hallelujah. I'm going to go put it in the washing machine and dryer, and we'll come back tomorrow and have a look. Well, it's a new day. The binding has been finished, it has been washed and dried, and just look how fun this quilt has turned out. I am thrilled with it. I'm thrilled with all the different things that I got to learn and try in working on it. So now I need to figure out what my next project's going to be. I did finish these 2 charity quilts at my guild retreat last week, so they may be the next thing that we start quilting on. One of them at least is just going to have a concentric circle quilted in the middle, and I know those are fun to do. I can't wait to share it with you. Thank you so much for joining me, and as always, I look forward to seeing you next time on Frances Quilts. Remember, if you like what you've seen, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Please check out my website and daily blog at francesquilts.com, and I can be found on Facebook and Instagram at Frances Quilts. Thanks so much for joining me. Hope to see you again soon.